In 1826, Thomas Jefferson died. Ever since then, we've been trying to figure out who his kids were. We know that he had 2 kids with his wife, Martha Wales, but after she died in 1782, he took a young woman named Sally Hemings as his concubine, and had children with her too. We don't know how many kids they had together, but it was somewhere between 4 and 6. And we also don't know if any of these children were his or Sally's or both. This is because back in the early 19th century, it wasn't exactly common to, collect DNA evidence from people at the time of their conception. So we're left with this mystery that has endured for over 200 years. But now scientists say they may have finally solved it by using a strand of Thomas Jefferson's hair to sequence his DNA and compare it to the DNA of some of his descendants. The results, which were published in the journal Nature on Wednesday, suggest that at least one of Sally Hemings' children was definitely Jefferson's. And the results also append a long-standing theory about Jefferson's relationship with another one of his supposed kids. Here's what's going on. Scientists have known for a while now that they could use a 19th century painting to help solve this mystery. See this painting called The Children of Thomas Jefferson by an artist named Charles Wilson Peale? It depicts 6 children that were supposedly Jefferson's biological kids, though it is hard to tell exactly how they related to him because back in the early 19th century, it wasn't common for people to include that sort of detail in paintings. Also, there are only 5 faces in the painting that are clearly visible. The 6th kid is kind of hidden behind a woman. But there are a few other clues. One kid is obviously a baby. Another is noticeably darker skinned than the others. And based on historical records, we know that the oldest kid in the painting was Jefferson's son with his first wife. So put all those clues together and you can get a pretty good idea of who all these kids are. But until now, we haven't had any actual genetic evidence to confirm this hypothesis. To get it, researchers got a sample of Thomas Jefferson's hair from a comb that he used. He gave the comb to a friend in 1796, so the hair should be from that time period. Scientists extracted DNA from the hair and compared it to the DNA of 8 people who are supposed to be Thomas Jefferson's descendants, including 2 people who are descended from Sally Hemings. Now, when comparing DNA, scientists typically look at very short tandem repeats, or VS. These are regions of DNA that have a short sequence of letters that are repeated over and over again. The number of repeats varies significantly between people, making them useful for identifying individuals. But comparing these sequences isn't always straightforward, because sometimes it can be hard to tell how many times a sequence has repeated itself. You might see, for instance, a GATC repeated 14 times in one person's DNA, but only 13 times in another person's DNA. In this case, you would say that these 2 people have one VSTR allele that differs by 1 repeat. The bigger the difference, the more genetically distant the people are likely to be. So, when the researchers looked at the VSTRs that were inherited from Thomas Jefferson, they saw something interesting. One of the supposed descendants of Sally Hemings had an allele that differed from Jefferson's by only 1 repeat, whereas the other supposed descendants of Hemings had alleles that differed from Jefferson's by 11 or 12 repeats. This meant that one of these people was much more closely related to Thomas Jefferson than the others. And when the team looked at a second VSTR locus, they saw the same pattern. Again, one of the Hemings descendants was closer to Jefferson than the others. Using these 2 VSTR loci alone, the researchers estimated that this particular child of Sally Hemings shared about 50% of their DNA with Thomas Jefferson. And that rules out the possibility that Jefferson was not their biological father. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about DNA that's over 200 years old here, so it degraded pretty quickly. They weren't able to sequence the entire genome, so they had to pick and choose which parts of the genome they looked at. In the end, they identified 11 regions where they could actually get high-quality sequence data. When they looked at those regions, they found that this particular descendant shared 99.9% of them with Thomas Jefferson, and that makes it highly unlikely that Sally Hemings' child belonged to someone else. The team also looked at a third individual who is believed to be Jefferson's granddaughter, but they couldn't get enough good quality data to draw any conclusions. So the big question now is, whose kid was this? Unfortunately, the answer remains elusive, at least for now. Hopefully more research will shed some light on this 200-year-old mystery. Thanks for watching this episode. We've made thousands of educational videos over the years, and we've been able to offer them for free because of our patrons. So to all of our patrons, Thank you for what you do to make this happen. If you're not a patron, but you want to learn more about what that means, you can go to our support page.